Spray foam industry is about to go through a monumental change that it has not seen in the 50 plus years that it has been around, and this is absolutely necessary to secure its future. This summer, I had an epiphany concerning spray foam insulation and how it's installed that has changed my life forever. And in this video, I'm going to share what it is and take you on the journey of why it matters so much. My name is Mike. I am the owner of Spray Jones. I'm a contracting firm in Canada. I've been spraying foam for 20 years, but in the business, been in the spray foam industry for 25. Spray foam insulation is a cellular plastic, but it doesn't become an insulation until it's sprayed into the walls, roof, or floor of your project. Therefore, it's actually custom manufactured on site. Whereas all other insulation materials that you will purchase and work with, the manufacturing process is done off-site in a controlled environment at a manufacturing facility. That product is then quality controlled, tested, sold to you, and then you hire a secondary person to install it to do its job. Spray foam insulation differs that the manufacturer and the installer are all the same individual. For 50 plus years, the equipment that has been used to proportion and install and make the final insulation that you paid for have not drastically changed until now. It is that subject that we're going to talk about today and why it's so vitally important to you and why most people today online object to spray foam insulation, and we're going to knock down this objection immediately. Before we get into that, I want you to do something for me. If you like this type of content, help me out by going to thinksprayfoam.com. That is my private online community dedicated to spray foam insulation. Whether you're installing the product or you're receiving it or you work with it, such as a building code inspector, this is the place you want to be. Why? You can get information, you can get dialogue with other people in the business that deal with building envelope and want to learn. This is the place to avoid the trolls, cut through all the BS, avoid the pitfalls, make money, and get better at what you do. It helps me support these types of video content creations, and it keeps the industry moving forward. So I'd love to see you in there. Plastic cellular foam insulation was invented in the 1930s by a man by the name of Otto Baer in Germany. At that one time, it took upwards of 8 different plastic components mixed in a beaker to make a polyurethane cellular plastic. That's too complicated for the average person to deal with. So over the decades that came after the invention and the patents that he filed, the chemistry was eventually improved to the point where everything that you would need would be in an A product and a B product. That your A would be your hardener and it would activate the chemical reaction, and that all of the design for the cellular plastic would be in the B. Therefore, if we could get these two products to meet at the right time, at the right temperature, and mix, and we had them to 1:1 ratio, by volume, not by weight, we could make an easy to process polyurethane foam plastic. This started in the 1950s, where polyurethane foams could be used and pumped into cavities, and they needed some method of moving the fluid from the bulk containers that they would come in, have them mix, and then have them go into the final cavity. This was fine from 1955, 1958 forward, but something changed by the 1960s. The advent of high-pressure polyurethane processing equipment that would allow the product to thereby be sprayed. We will call this the old school era. At that time, a dual-acting piston pump was used to proportion A and B, with a common drive system at the top that was usually air and later switched to hydraulic. The issue with these systems was that they were taking the industry from being very complex with multiple liquid products that needed to be mixed down to a 1-to-1 product that needed to be mixed. And now you had a simplistic processing system that the liquids could come in at the back of the machine, be sucked in, pressurized, sent down into a heater, warmed up down a hose that was heated, and at that point delivered to a spray gun that when you pulled the trigger, the two products would meet, mix, and spray out under their own pressure. The issue that we have been faced with is that none of the original impetus of equipment ever changed. We had a cylinder that would fill with fluid. It would be basically our syringe. It would measure out the volume. It was dual acting so that no matter if the machine was going on an upstroke or a downstroke, it was displacing fluid out of it. The heaters were very rudimentary. How they detected temperature was rudimentary. How they warmed the product was rudimentary. How the hose kept the product warm was rudimentary. All of these things have very slightly improved over the decades, but the fundamentals of how we process the actual components to make plastic have not changed. And the number one thing that has not changed is how you are able to measure this and to prove this. Because the number one objection online to polyurethane foam insulation is, how do I know that what I'm buying is correct? How do I know that it was on ratio of A and B and that I don't just have sludge in the walls? How do I know that proper plastic was made for my job? And that's a legitimate question, and I'm going to get into how we go about answering that. This is very important. Stick with me. Processing and making plastic on site means that there are a number of variables that need to be accounted for. People's concerns are well placed. Is the fluid that you're dealing with cold? Why would cold matter? Because cold means that it becomes thick. Things don't like to pump and move and mix very well when they're cold. Is there a limit to cold? Is it too cold? Mediocre? Is it Goldilocks? Is it under high pressure, low pressure? Do we have a good flow, or is the flow rate disrupted? Do we have a clogged screen? Is the chamber that we will call the mixing chamber, where the products meet, is it clogged up? Is it letting all of the product through? And if it is, how do we know this? Well, the issue that we have had for 50 years is the majority of our equipment, the proportioners that proportion out the 1-to-1 by ratio, the 1-to-1 ratio that we need in order to make the final product that goes into the walls that you're paying for or roof. Those proportioning machines are fairly analog. We are in a digital age, but these machines are analog. Analog in measuring the ratio, in measuring the temperatures, in measuring the outbound pressure and the outbound ratio. And I'll explain to you why. None of the equipment that we are currently using in mass circulation today was purpose-built for the idea of processing specifically polyurethane foam. Now, I can hear people screaming right here, right now. Oh, what is he saying? What is he talking about? Let me tell you the truth. If you have been watching my content for the last 8-9 years, I'm going to speak to you on an adult level here with no BS. Most of the technology, if not all, I'm going to go with all of the technology that I use to this day to process and spray foam for my customers is at its core borrowed technology from other methods of how to detect temperature, volume, pressure, fluid dynamics. It's all borrowed technology from hydraulics and other processing methods. Now, you might say that makes sense. Why do we have to reinvent the wheel? Why don't we just take this and let's bolt this? And that's what happened. A proportioning cylinder, a hydraulic cylinder, an air cylinder, a heat exchanger, a method for heating a hydraulic high-pressure hose. You are correct. But what if that got us started, just like carburation in the engine world got us started with delivering a fuel-to-air ratio so that the engine could run? A gasoline engine needs to run on carburation. The carburetor is an analog system, an analog computer for mixing fuel-to-air ratio so that it can burn. You know what happens if it's fuel rich or fuel lean? The engine's not going to run properly. Well, spray polyurethane foam has the ability to run rich or run lean when it comes to proportioning. And this is the objection that most people have. How do I know as the consumer? How do I know as the architect? And how do you know as the spray foam installer? That's me. I'm a spray foam installer. How do we know that we are 1-to-1 ratio? How do we know that our mixture is correct, that we have made proper cellular plastic? Prove to me that you have made proper plastic foam. If we're in a manufacturing facility and we're going to make panels and we're going to make plastic components for something, would we not want to be assured that the plastic that we have made is correct, that it went into the mold correct, that it's curing correctly? Well, we would have all sorts of ways of measuring and validating in real time that what we are using is proper. And that's what we're going to get into now. We're going to get into moving from carburation, which will work, but it's very hard to monitor carburation. Carburation has all sorts of points of contact. It doesn't do well at altitude, where the air is thin, where the oxygen level is thin. You can set it up to run rich and lean, and it's all person, human being, installer dependent. And this is what's happened in the spray polyurethane world. Yes, we have equipment that has digital sensors on it, and we have alarms, and we have digital readouts, and we don't have rheostat dials. I get all of that. But we still are not able, with conventional methods, to prove what our ratio is, what our temperature inbound, outbound, the fluid, all of it is doing exactly and precisely, and what impact that is having on ratio and making sure we're making good cellular plastic. I'm going to show you how this all turns around right here, right now. I'm going to show you what the solution is to this. And this is the epiphany. This is the red pill moment that I had this summer, this August. I had a moment where the light bulb went on, and this is the future of our industry, folks. Making polyurethane foam on site has a lot of variables to the overall quality. Now, I am not saying that we cannot make a quality foam. We can. What I am saying is that proving it can be a lot more difficult. The objections that I hear over and over again online is that, how do I know as the homeowner? How do I know as the building owner? How do I know as the architect that what I've received is proper? Now, I'm going to turn it around. As a spray foam installer, which I am, and I'm asking this to my other brothers and sisters in the spray foam industry, how do you know that what you've made for your client is correct? Can you visually tell? Can you physically tell? Can you cut into it? Yes, there are a couple of things that we can do that will give us some baseline results: adhesion, coadhesion, density, but they really don't tell us the final figure. If we're going to leave everything up to a visual inspection, we're leaving an awful lot on the table until we get into measuring digitally ratio, until we get into measuring digitally how the entire process from drum to spray gun has been processed. So therefore, the most important thing that we can do is move from a carbureted analog system of delivering our fuel to air ratio to our engine to a digital fuel injected system. Now, bear with me for just 1 minute. Fuel injection says that a electronic system is now going to be opening and closing solenoids and valves, and you've got pumps that are pumping the fuel pump that is pumping and pressurizing to a fuel injector. And we have the ability to measure flow rates. We have the ability to measure air to fuel ratio. We have the ability to measure temperature. And thereby we can tell whether we are running lean or rich. We also can tell with a sensor on various points of the engine where the engine is at in the firing cycle. So no longer do we need analog physical systems to fix our ratio, fix our proportioning, fix our firing order. We can now relay all that electronic data back to an ECM, an electronic control module, a computer, and the computer will read the data that's coming in and then decide when to fire the systems. So it will monitor it, it will control it, its fire control center, and it will continue to record the data so that if any changes have to be made, like we drive our car up Pikes Peak and we're at 10,000 feet altitude, it can change the fuel to air ratio. That, folks, is exactly what we need for processing polyurethane plastics in the spray foam world. Why? Because we need to get on ratio. We need the machine to be monitored constantly. How the flow of the fluid, the temperature of the fluid, the flow rate, how it's being processed. Every single component within the proportioning machine has been selected for optimal fluid passage, temperature monitoring, flow rates, and output of ratio. And we can monitor this through our choice of pieces of equipment to get down to hyper accuracy. We're talking 1/100th of a gallon on ratio. Wouldn't I want that as a spray foam installer? Wouldn't I want to know that I can measure every last bit of the process from drum to gun? That's what we need to get us on ratio, maintain us on ratio, because this is going to be digitally controlled. This is going to be sensors within our machine that are going to relay the data that they're getting back to an ECM, back to electronic control module, a computer. The computer will report back on all that data and then make the necessary changes. There's variables that it can then change to maintain and make sure that we have correct ratio. It will pressurize the system and make sure the ratio is 1-to-1. And because we're recording this in real time through digital processes, through a computer, we now have real-time flight data, a black box, if you will, of validation. What is validation? I can record what you did on site. If you're looking for certainty as a homeowner, building owner, architect, building inspector, the answer is here now. We need equipment, and equipment does exist. It's a small, burgeoning part of the industry, but the industry is going to go through a massive metamorphosis, and I'm going to help lead this change. Why? Because I've had the epiphany, folks. I have seen it. All equipment that I have been using up until now, this is me personally speaking, all my equipment that I've had up until now, as good as it's been, is still analog. And I want to go to a fully digital system that will monitor the entire process from the back of the drum, the temperature, the pressure, the flow rate, the heating, the pressurization, and the outbound volume measured to 1/100th of a gallon and beyond, that will measure my down pressure, flow, temperature, all of it, and will get me there, maintain me there, and then I have a validation report when I'm done. I can hand you, my customer, proof that we got on ratio, stayed on ratio, produced plastic foam, and there's no problem with it. Now, we can spray it to a wet substrate, we can spray it wrong. That's a different aspect of quality control about environmentals. As far as the plastic processing is concerned, I can show you that we've made proper plastic. And for the spray foam industry to go into the future and to earn people's trust and earn people's admiration, to take the necessary ground of installing on site, the future is the fuel-injected, validated system of digital installation that what I'm talking about. And I'm going to showcase this personally. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is, because I'm going to switch out a lot of my equipment to this new process. I'm going to take you along for the ride. You're going to get to see this in real time, how we're going to validate spray foam, how we're going to build consumer trust, how we're going to prove to the world that we can make plastic foam on site and that it's correct. So stick around. I'm going to show you how we're going to do this. Welcome to the digital age. Everything else that we've done up until now just became old school. Welcome to new school. If you like this kind of content, click on the subscribe right now. Join thinksprayfoam.com today, because there's going to be exclusive content in my personal online community that you won't get anywhere else. And this is going to be an event to remember. 2025 moving into 2026 and beyond is the time that you are going to say that you remembered how the spray foam industry changed. So stick around. You're going to like what you see next.